Hello, welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Tonight we're speaking with Alice Lesnick in conjunction with her Cerulean Arts Collective Exhibition, which is on view now through March the 9th. Hello, Alice.
Hi, Mike. Good evening.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Please tell us a bit about yourself and the show.
Well, thank you. I think I'll start with the show instead of about myself or myself through the show. Um, I called it Our House. It's an exploration and I suppose in a way a celebration of home. Um, and it's got some questions in it about the intimacy of home, the welcome of home, the safety of home, but also sometimes the expansiveness that we can be at home in ways both quite local and quite global or cosmic. And I think one of my big interests in life is both how to understand um, the local and the bigger scale of our life. Yeah, in space and time. The paintings are mostly done with, well, they're all acrylic paint, um, mostly on canvas, I think one on wood. And they also, like this one, explore our home as sort of beginning with our bodies. So you might look at this painting um, as a kind of opening out of the body, some kind of magic in play, a little wizardry, which I'm interested in. Um, Something I like and appreciate and feel grateful for in painting is not to have to accept things as given and to be able to work into other possibilities. This painting is called Mountains of Love. So, how is that perhaps a home or our home?
So, Alice, I wanted to ask you about your style. So, you're working in an abstract or semi-abstract manner. So, how did that come about?
That's how I started painting. So I started painting sort of near the cusp of my 50th birthday. Um, and I was not formally trained. I was informally trained as a teacher of kids at a certain point and as a mother of young kids. And as a young student myself in seventh grade, the teacher held up my picture in art class and said, "This is how not to do it."
Oh, no.
So that was a huge turnoff, especially
I
because I
bet.
was a very dedicated schoolgirl, very devoted to doing well and seeking the approval of my elders. So when he said that, I just walked away from art making altogether until I became
Oh,
a teacher myself.
that's awful.
It's awful, but um,
So, what brought you back?
yeah, so I have a couple of dear friends who are both artists, and one day I asked one of them if I could just join her one afternoon and paint. And she invited me through a series of sort of exercises, looking at some art books and then doing some visual journaling, as she called it, and then stepping up to a canvas to paint. And so the path I found was a path of sort of moving from working from sort of the inside out and then the outside in, and then the back and forth, a sort of negotiation with what's actually on the canvas, which, as you know, quickly gets us into trouble. And then there's a big dance, sometimes a struggle to move through or work through that trouble. Um, yeah. So it's just the way I started. Um, I was lucky enough then to take classes with Kasem Amoudi, who actually happens to be another member here. And I
Yeah.
learned so much from him, particularly about looking, um, and also actually about editing. Kasem taught me to think about editing my paintings and to think about how less can be more. Um, and I stopped studying with him, you know, I took several classes with him, and I think because maybe of my original experience and because my career has been in schools and academia, I thought, let me keep going, and with the world as my teacher and with the paint and the brushes as my teacher. But I have to say, I was really happy that he came to see the show, when it opened last week, and even said that he was happy with my progress. So it meant a lot to me back then when I was in one of his classes. I brought in a canvas and he looked at it for a minute and he said, "You've surprised me." And I thought, ha, I must be on a good track. And how different from that old long ago teacher who said, not it.
Yes, for sure. So, Alice, when you start these, I mean, do you work directly or do you have a reference or how do you put these together?
Yeah, I work directly. I sometimes have a reference, not a visual reference. I don't work from observation or photos or anything. Although recently I took a wonderful drawing class, um, with Stuart Shills on, um, sort of moving from and with observation, which was great. But I would say I start with some kind of interior intention or question, might be a word, might be like an inclination towards a certain something, but pretty quickly it's a process, a physical process of moving the paint. And then there's a dialogue with what's happening. Sometimes it's a crunchy dialogue, literally to what's happening with how things look and feel, and then how that is carrying sort of an inquiry that I've brought. Um, and sometimes the painting, like, teaches me what I'm wondering about and helps me put it into words later. These
Right.
as
It's
a
a
group. Oh, sorry, go ahead,
it's
Mike.
a, yes, it becomes a conversation.
It does. And then it's so wonderful, in a show like this to get to see them in conversation with each other in this beautiful space. Um, and it was your and Tina's choice to hang that group there, which I think reference much as directly as any of these the sort of spiritual dimension of home. Um, so yeah, there's a conversation going on with me and each painting, and then across the paintings, and then across paint and language. Here we're back in the home of the body.
Yeah, so how did you come to the concept of home for this group?
Um, the last show that I did here at Cerulean was called Safe as Houses. And it was actually about the precarity of our shelters and how hard we have to work to hold them stable. And this time, when I started exploring the group of paintings, I noticed I was painting, in a way, a happier story about the arrival of home, the possibility of a kind of stability, that allows for, that's rooted in love and that allows for movement and outreach and upreach. So it was fortunately timed with Valentine's Day, but also fortunately timed with the hard times in our world these days. Um, because I'm as very concerned as I am, I'm also seeking to protect my mind with an understanding of, um, the possibilities of creating good, nourishing, and welcoming homes. without violence.
So would it be a refuge?
Yes, it could be a refuge. Um, Definitely. Also, hopefully a perch or a takeoff point, a place of stability that allows for action and engagement. So both refuge and extension. I'd like to
Right.
think
You need a good base to spring from.
that's it. That, yes. And I think we might have talked before. I'm a student of Qigong, um, the movement branch of traditional Chinese philosophy. And I think one way to talk about it is about understanding better the base from which we spring, both sort of through gravity and the earth and through um, the body and how it connects with light. But yeah, I think a good home is just that, like a safe place, a safe base to spring from. We don't want to get stuck and kind of hunkering down.
Right. Yeah, just hiding.
Exactly. Yeah.
Although sometimes that's the impulse.
And sometimes necessary.
Yeah. You have
Yeah.
to retreat.
Yeah.
So how do you think about color in your painting?
Um, I know what I like. Um, I don't know that I think about it all that much, Mike. I mean, but my process is quite emergent. I start with usually just three primary colors, black and white. Sometimes I break that rule, but then I don't like mix a palette ahead of time and use that. I quite mix all along the way. Um, and I love acrylic because it's so forgiving in mixing and in covering over and in scraping down. So I do have some go-to colors. I mean, there's often this kind of lightish green that has a bunch of colors and some black in it, um, for instance. But yeah, I would say I'm going for what I think will work. And there's this real kind of sweaty side of that, like, want to work. This,
Right.
and then sometimes when I land on it and I feel like I've solved that problem, there's a sense of resolution. And then sometimes you can go too far past the resolution
That's right. And then you
into
have
new
to
trouble.
paint your way out of it.
Yeah.
So when you work on these, are these done over like are they one-shot paintings? Or are you working on them over time? And are you working on more than one at a time?
Yeah. Thank you. I love these questions. They're seldom one-shot paintings, very seldom. I sort of like to dwell with them a bit. Um, and sometimes I'm working on two or three at a time. Um, you two put two together that really did grow up together. So that was delightful for me because I didn't say anything. Um, and sometimes some of these were paintings several years ago that I never fully felt were finished, but just stalled out. Um, and then I came back to them and said, "Oh, let's see about you." And that's extremely gratifying when there's something that's been there and it didn't quite have enough charge or clarity, and then there's a way to bring those. Um, Something satisfying about that.
So I think this is the largest piece in the show, Confidences.
Mm,
Can you talk about this one in particular a little bit?
sure. Yeah, this one was something else a few years ago, which is how some of those big shapes got laid in. But it became, as I was doing it with this long interest in house and home, these the idea of these two houses, it looks to me the white shapes are a bit like two houses leaning in, almost like gossiping neighbors. And then behind them maybe is a cityscape. And then coming out of them is all kinds of growth and complexity. So partly it's sort of like what happens behind closed doors is often invisible to us. The privacies of our social life really interest me. I think often people are their safest, but often they're most vulnerable behind closed doors. Um, so this idea of sort of what we share, what's visible and what's invisible, um, on a street, in a neighborhood. And I think I live on a street where I've lived for 25 years and where there's been a mix of lovely things that have happened and actually some terrible things that have happened. Um, so I'm sort of interested in what the houses would say if they could talk.
Mhm.
And in yeah, even our homes as part of the family, as it were, with all that that means.
Mhm. And are you working with a set of symbols in your work?
I mean, in this show, several paintings with hearts joined
Yes.
together, and I did get really interested in this, just the symbol of the heart and the literal shape of the heart. It's kind of it's a conventionalized, not actually how a human heart looks at all. And that interests me too. So far, I haven't gotten interested in painting the actual shape of a heart, but yeah, I mean, sometimes like one of my daughters says my paintings sometimes remind her of tarot cards, and I like that. I'm sort of interested in I like tarot. I'm no adept, but it's fun. And I find playing with symbols and kind of waking them up. Um, so even though a heart is so conventional, the way, even a
Right.
child learns to draw it, to sort of put it in a context where it's refreshed is of interest.
And this house, like very graphic house shape appears a lot.
Yeah, I know. I think like yes, and there's um this this blue shape of a very
Yeah.
simple, conventional, childlike image of a structure with a roof. Um, and then this painting sort of suggests it might be in the process of coming apart or coming together inside of a larger structure. Yeah, I think I think I was an only child in a lonely house growing up, a big lonely
Mhm.
house, quite and rather scary. So I've always been also interested in fairy tales, Hansel and Gretel.
Mm.
Um, is a big one for me. Like, how do we make our way there? Who's waiting there?
Right. Finding your way back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then on the other hand, a sense of, I had colleagues recently speaking about a book they wrote about how human life is both concerned with dependence and emergence. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. It sort of relates to this.
Mm.
Like, yeah, we do have to depend on the earth, each other, our bodies. And
Right.
we are also, and that puts us in some hard spaces. And at the same time, we're all creative and like miraculous with life. And there's possibility there. So I think that's what I'm really painting is possibility.
Well, it's a great show, Alice.
Thank you very much.
The show is up through March 9th. We hope people come down to check it out. And everything's also available on our website, ceruleanarts.com. And well, thanks so much for being here tonight and have a great night.
Thank you very much. You too. And thank you, Tina.